Jonathan, to you, first of all. She wasn't expecting this, was she?
Well, what Theresa May has done throughout this process is shown extreme goodwill towards the European Union. And I think what we've got at the moment is the European Union and Irish government between them putting up, frankly, straw men and red herrings, choose your own metaphor, which seems to be delaying the prospect of moving the talks on to phase 2, which we would all like to see as of the European Council later in the month. One of the sticking points here is clearly the Irish border. Well, so much of this comes down to the fact that you can't actually discuss precisely what arrangement may or may not be needed at the Irish border until you know the trading arrangements that you have with Ireland, which is what phase 2 of the talks is all about. So it's always slightly preposterous to say that you couldn't...
Yeah, let me just interrupt you there, Jonathan, and say, so why did she agree a form of words with the Irish government that was read to them and they agreed to?
Look, I don't know exactly what was agreed to. There have been leaks and premature drafts put out before the meeting that she had with Jean-Claude Juncker on Monday afternoon. But certainly, I mean, as far as the DUP are concerned, they have put out a very strong message that they are committed to delivering Brexit, the proper clean Brexit that the British people as a United Kingdom voted for in overwhelming numbers last year. And you know, if the DUP are helping hold the government to delivering that, then that's good for them, frankly.
Let's bring in Wes, should we? To be fair, is what we're hearing from Jonathan. As far as trade's concerned, and that soft, hard Irish border, whatever it might be, we can't really have that conversation until we know about the trade deals that we're going to do.
Well, where I would agree with Jonathan is that we need to move on to phase 2 of these talks as soon as possible, not least because there are businesses on both sides of the channel and on both sides of the Irish Sea that are relying on our government and the European Union to come to an arrangement that works in our shared interest. I think what the sticking point seems to have been this week is that Theresa May has successfully negotiated with the European Union, but she has not successfully negotiated within the United Kingdom. And I think it is frankly preposterous that 10 MPs who do not even speak for a majority of opinion in Northern Ireland are able to hold up the Brexit process in this way. And we are... You know, as a country, we ought to be in a position where we've got a clear negotiating position that the majority of people in Parliament who want to respect the outcome of the referendum have shown that through votes, where a majority of people in Parliament can unite behind the British negotiating position. Instead, we get to a position where the Prime Minister agrees text with European counterparts, but then subsequently can't get it past the DUP leader, Arlene Foster, who seems to be the most powerful woman in the country at present. And this is, you know, 10 MPs constitute the DUP in Parliament. There is a vast majority of MPs who want to see the best possible outcome for the UK from these talks, who are deeply frustrated, and it's embarrassing for the Prime Minister because she's shown that as a leader of her country she can't even get internal consensus, and she's had the rug pulled out from under her feet this week in around the negotiating table, and I think this is deeply harmful.
Sure, Jonathan, this is what happens with a marriage of convenience.
It's what happens in a system where you don't have a majority government, that you have to agree deals on a consensual basis amongst different parties. It's what you saw when you had the coalition between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems between 2010 and 2015. And last time I checked, Wes was in favour of an electoral system that created permanent hung parliaments, which would always mean that you had to have deals, and with those deals inevitably come arguably disproportionate power to smaller parties. But as far as the DUP are concerned, they are the biggest party in Northern Ireland. They have 10 of the 11 MPs from Northern Ireland who take their seats at Westminster, and it's absolutely right that they should be heavily involved in any consultation over what happens with respect to Northern Ireland. But when Wes talks about trying to get a parliamentary consensus behind the UK negotiating position, I would love to see that. But far too often over the last few months, we've seen some of Wes's colleagues on the Labour and Lib Dem and SNP benches completely doing the opposite and seeking to undermine the British negotiating position, seeking to say that Britain should...
Let him come back on that. Wes?
Yeah, of course. I mean, let's not forget that the Prime Minister needlessly took her party into a general election where she stood on a manifesto
come on, your
promising...
Side. We're calling for it every other day, so come on.
I wasn't one of the turkeys that voted for Christmas on that vote in Parliament, I can tell you that. But nonetheless, we had a general election that we didn't need to have. The Prime Minister said that she would take us out of the single market and out of the customs union, delivering a hard Brexit. She failed to get a majority. I believe that within the House of Commons there is a clear majority of MPs who, however they voted, leave or remain, could support a Brexit position where we remain members of the single market and members of the customs union, supporting our national economic interests. But the government's not interested in trying to build consensus. But you know, that Theresa May has ended up in this absurd and damaging position where she's cobbled together a very flaky agreement with the DUP that can't stand up when it comes to getting critical decisions through. So, you know, the worst thing about this week, of course, it's politically embarrassing for the Prime Minister. As a Labour MP, I'm not too bothered about that. Nonetheless, as a Brit, as a British MP, as a patriot, it is embarrassing for our country to see the Prime Minister in a position where she agrees a position with her European counterparts that would enable us to move to phase 2 of the talks, and the rug is pulled out from under her feet by a woman, Arlene Foster, who is not even a member of Parliament, but she's leader of the DUP, and she and the 10 MPs she has in Westminster can derail the whole Brexit process. It leaves the Prime Minister fatally wounded.
OK, Jonathan?
Wes is under a severe misapprehension if he thinks that somehow remaining in the customs union and the single market is compatible with Brexit. It's not. People voted for Brexit to leave the European Union so that we would have control of our laws, our borders, our money and our trade policy.
That's not what people said during the referendum.
And if we... Yes, it is, and if you listen to people like Nick Clegg said, and Angela Eagle said, and David Cameron and George Osborne...
You're quoting lots of Remainers, Jonathan. That's not what leading Leave campaigners were saying. We'd stay in the single market. They did.
Was quite clear.
Leading Leave campaigners said, well, single market's no question about that, it's going to be all right, and now they've rewritten the rules after the referendum.
During the referendum, Michael Gove, Boris Johnson and others were as clear as David Cameron and George Osborne and others on the Remain side that Brexit meant leaving the single market, leaving the customs union.
I think at best it was muddy.